Okay, back for another video on the Bolens. This is going to be mostly about the wheel hub, dual wheel hub adapters basically. So here I've got a pair, start off slowly here, and they're painted black. I've had these, I don't know, 10 years maybe, I don't know, but I might have painted them black, but if you look at them under the surface, they're red, and there's more to that, but the fact that I probably painted them black, and they're probably red originally, so that goes to, it gets complicated. So let me just show the details of what I've done here. So I believe these are 7/16 inch fine thread. I think that's what they are. And you don't want to use, I mean, you can use normal nuts, but these are actually nuts specifically for wheels because they're tapered. That helps to center the wheel and sit inside of the rim there. I don't have any of these loosened up, but yeah, these are kind of tight in there. But anyway, basically you need an extra set of bolts. Some of the hubs on these Bolens only have 3 bolts here. They don't have these other 2. Excuse me. I'm not sure if that was a cost-cutting thing or what it was, but sometimes there's only 3 bolts, and I think that I might have a tractor that's like that, but I'm not even sure. It's been a while since I've even looked. But so the 1254 has the 5 lugs. The 1050 has the 5 lugs, and that's the way I would like it, just for a heavier wheel hub and 5 bolts. I'd rather have 5 bolts bolted on there than 3. The 600 has, okay, so here's the deal. The 600 has the 5. Actually, the 600 has 8 holes in it. Interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so it has more than 1 bolt pattern on the inside hub of the left side. But on the right side, you can see there's only 3 bolts here. And that's because the hub only asks for 3. So, let's see what the 750 is. I believe that would be the same. Yep. So, okay, 750 has 3 lugs on both sides. So, this hub is only made for 3 bolts. Okay. Got that established so far. So if I were going to use these hubs, I'd obviously prefer a hub with 5 bolts and not the hub with 3 bolts on it, and that's a little complicated also. So let's say, for example, I take this hub and I try to put it on there. I've got 3 lugs on the inside to the hub, and then I've got 5 lugs on the outside. That's fine, I guess, but the further you get away from that hub, the more leverage you put on those hubs, and I would much rather have 5 bolts being leveraged on than 3 bolts. And that's just a stress issue. So I'd be more likely to put these on the bigger models because they have the 5 lugs instead of the 3 lugs. So the 600 and the 750 are the ones with only 3 lugs on them. And I don't know if that's true across all models. I only know that that's what I have. And let's see, I have another one over here, and I'm not really even sure. Again, I'm still cleaning up. I got a whole yard of mess that I'm going through. It's quite cold out here. So here I've got this other one that we can't really identify. That's got 5 on both sides. So I would think it's a larger model rear end on it. Above 8 or 900, I would assume. Okay, so let's go back to here. Now, why I haven't really used these is a few things. I haven't needed them, and when I get these 10.5-inch wide AGs, I usually don't have any problem gripping anything. The worst case scenario is I do need to put some weight on the back over here, and I've done that. I've braced things up and put weights on the stuff before. But just for the 750, I have wheel weights on the on the wheels, just to kind of weigh it down a little bit more. I'm not really a heavy person. I'm about $150 something, so I don't put a whole lot of weight on the back end. So I supplement that with other weights. Okay, so let's move on here. Okay, so the story behind these is pretty simple. I picked these up when I went to go get parts for something else, and then the guy offered me these for a high price, and I was there already. I had driven like 100 miles to get parts already, and finding parts for these is pretty rare, so I figured I'd pick these up for a high price, and I'm glad I did. I mean, I might use them someday, but haven't used them much. There's some complications to that. So you look at the details. This looks like it's got, I wouldn't call it a messy weld, but it's not a perfect weld, so it's obviously not done by a machine, or it doesn't look like it's done by a machine. That one's welded on the outside. That one's welded, the bead is on the inside. That way the rim can sit flat against this outside here. So I would call this portion the inside wheel, and then this portion the outside wheel, so that can sit flat there. I don't know that it even matters, to be honest, but that's kind of what I've done as far as it looks like here. So let's go back to these wheels. These wheels, the rims actually, when I went to go pick these up, I had a long conversation with the guy, and at that time I think I learned something, and I could be wrong about this. I did a lot of research back in the day. I believe that all of these wheels, like this, all these Bolens wheels on the back end, I believe they're, I could be making this up. I'm just going by my history. I believe they're called Jacobsen wheels, Jacobsen. And Jacobsen had a lawn tractor called a Chief. Now they've got like a 100-year history that I don't really know about, but Jacobsen made lawn tractor stuff, and I think that their one famous model was the Jacobsen Chief. I could be wrong about that. So when I was having a conversation with this older guy who seems like he had been through all this, he called these Jacobsen wheels, and I could be wrong, but I think that there was a company called Jacobsen that set the standard for these bolt patterns and the size, and I believe that all these back wheels on these are called Jacobsen wheels. Now, to further implant that in my brain, basically Jacobsen also had like transmissions and transaxles for lawn tractors also, and I believe they made other parts as well, but I believe they also had Jacobsen transmissions. They had Peerless, they had Jacobsens, they had there's several names that I could throw out there, but I believe that Jacobsen rear end, you know, required a Jacobsen wheel, and then I believe that other manufacturers bought parts from Jacobsen like the wheels. And so if you look at a manufacturer like Cub Cadet, John Deere, maybe International Harvester, maybe Case, maybe Sears, maybe Ford. I'm thinking of some, I'm sure I'm thinking of some other, Farmall. These are not Bolens. These are a different brand. I think they're International Harvester. But so at that time, there were manufacturers who were producing parts, I would say, kind of quote, for each other. So for example, the Jacobsen Chief, I believe, had a Kohler engine on it, a K161 or something maybe. And so back in that time period, whatever period that was, there were manufacturers of garden tractors buying specific parts from specific companies. So, for example, all kinds of them had a Peerless transmission on them. Like, that wasn't exclusive to one brand, I don't believe. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that a Peerless was not exclusive to one brand. So between Kohler and Peerless and Sears and Ford and International, all that stuff, they used parts on other brands and other models. And they're kind of customized. In other words, I couldn't just take something off of my Toro and throw it over there because they're kind of custom fitted for that brand, but that might have been a Peerless transmission on there. And I would assume it's probably used for Cub Cadets nowadays and all kinds of other ones. That's a kind of a newer one that's being parted out. But my understanding is that one manufacturer made parts for other brands, specifically the Jacobsen wheel. And in all my videos, I do not mind being corrected about anything. So if you know otherwise, please do say so. But I believe that these were called Jacobsen wheels, and they pretty much established a standard bolt pattern for garden tractors. And they may have been the first in America to do that. I know they have like a 100-year history of building industrial, military engines and commercial, farm, agriculture, all that stuff. So my whole understanding on these wheels is based on the Jacobsen wheel, and that's just what I've understood. And I haven't been told wrong anything otherwise yet. So let's call these the Jacobsen wheels, just for keep things clear for me. The rear rims are Jacobsen rims. Now the tire you put on them obviously is a whole different thing. So let's get started here. So this hub here, I want to say it's probably 7 to 8 inches in width, right to left. Just based on a dollar bill, it's like 6 to 8 inches. I have to get out a dollar bill to find it out. But so let's show something here. So this is the skinniest wheel. I do have some of the original turf tires that go on the 600 and 750. They were like 6 inches wide, and everybody knows those wheels. They're pretty standard turf tires that came on them. They're kind of skinny. I prefer the skinny wheels just because it keeps the whole tractor skinny. When I have my fat wheels on there, the whole tractor gets fatter. And if you're trying to go along the edge of a building or a sidewalk or something like that, those wheels stick out a couple inches past the rest of the tractor. So I prefer the skinny wheels, the skinny AG wheels. But my point about that is the skinny wheels are required in order to use these. So when I put this on here, for example, you can see I've got plenty sticking out. Okay, there's plenty sticking out away from the wheel that I can hook another wheel on. Okay, so let's go to the 1254 and I'll show you the other side, of course. I'm going to get into all kinds of complications here. If you look at that there, that's going to barely come to the edge it's barely sticking out past flush. Well, I can't hook another wheel onto that because the dish of these rims is too deep. So these are not useful. If I try to double up this 10.5-inch wide tire, it's not going to work. Basically going to stick out. Now I could apply weights on there, I could put other stuff on there, but I can't put another wheel on there to make it a dual wheel. Another complication, my lockouts. I can't put these on there because of lockouts. They're just in the way. Another complication is my wheel weights. So let's say I want to put this tire on there, I want to put this on there. It's next to impossible to put the hub, the dual wheels on there, and the wheel weights. So those are the complications on it. It does fit inside of this wheel weight. I want to say this is International Harvester wheel weight, but that just complicates things because I can't get in there and tighten the nuts. And then if I tried to put on this outside wheel, I wouldn't be able to do that here either. Now, these bolts, they are threaded into the hub, so I can just take these nuts off. Excuse me, and these bolts will stay where they're at, and then I just have to apply the nuts to the outside. However, if one of those gets stripped or complicated, then I have to get to the inside of this to release the wheel from this. So even though this is tapped into here, once I put it on, I'm counting on that tap to be good. Now these are 3/16 inch wall steel here, and same on this tube part of it. So those complications keep me from using these often. So really what these are practical for is you can put one skinny wheel, and then you can put another skinny wheel to make it dual wheels, or you can put a fat wheel to make it dual wheels. But I can't put two fat wheels to make it dual wheels with these adapters. Now maybe they make some that are bigger, longer, wider, whatever, but I don't have those. I just have these types. So that's pretty much the extent of that. Let's see if I have any cents on me today, or dollars. See if I have a dollar on me. I have some cents, but I don't know if I have any dollars. Okay, so I'm going to take $1, which is 6 inches, and we're going to see what the actual length of this is without me having to go get tools. Nice crispy $1 bill. So let's put that $1 there and compare this. So we've got, okay, I'm going to call this a 6.5. So from right to left, it's about, from here to here, it's about 6.5. So basically that's going to affect what size wheel you can put on it. So if you look at the wheels on this 1254, I've got the fat ones on here. This is a 23 by 10.5 by 12 NHS tire. It's called a Flota tire. Super extra grip, made by D Stone, it says. But if you look at the inside dish, also there's a couple inches between this outside here and then this here. That's 3 inches. There's a couple inches of spaces in there. So not only do you have to account for the outside dish on the dual wheels, you also have to count on the inside dish of the rim. So that's not very practical. So I think that mostly explains these dual wheel hubs, and they're useful. They're heavy duty, but I don't know if I'd want them much longer than this either, because when you think about the stress that puts on that wheel and that hub, I wouldn't want to do less than a 5-lug hub. The 3-lug hubs, I would be hesitant to put those on there. Now 600 to 750, I wouldn't mind too much having 2 dual skinny wheels. So when you get to the fat wheels and you start getting a lever way out here away from the hub, it's going to put a whole lot of strain on that there, and I just don't know that these are going to be able to handle that forever. Just do everything I can not to damage them and not to overstress them. I already give them a huge workout, and I kind of push them to their limits already, I think. And adding another wheel is just going to put another strain on there that I probably don't want. Now, if I were using these in a, for example, like a soft plowed farm or garden, I can see how the dual wheels would be a little bit less stressful, and a little like the ground is a little softer, and you might actually need a little bit more of that traction. Well, I've never really needed any of that extra traction, so they're not really practical for me in most cases. Again, I just am hesitant about using them on anything, because everything that I use these for is practical. These are just tools to me. I'm not really a collector. I'm not really integrated into the farming community or the tractor community or anything like that. So these are just my tools, and I have to work on them to keep them running well. You can see I keep a couple belts. Usually keep a couple belts around, because if I'm driving on these 1 belts, sometimes I stress them to the point that the belts do get torn up, especially like if I'm plowing and I hit a dead stop, it'll put a chunk in the belt. That's why I prefer using the bigger models to push blades. So that's important to me, is always keep an extra belt around for the 600 and the 750 especially. 1254, 1050, I don't really need the extra belts. Those 2-belt drives do really good in transferring the horsepower from the engine to the wheels. Okay, so that's it for the hubs. I can answer any other questions. Yeah, the wheel weights, the dishes of the rims, all those things make a difference when it comes to putting these dual hub adapters on there. So as much as I like them, I paid a high price for them. I've been kind of sitting on them because I'm thinking one day I might actually have to use them. So I haven't had to yet. I've had them on there before for parades and shows, just locally, just run through the local parade, but I don't really do much traveling for this. So I think that covers the dual hub adapters. Yeah, so these, I mean, they look like they're handmade, but they also look like they might be a factory type part where somebody welded them by hand. They're nice and solid. The welds are solid, but they don't look like they're done by a machine like today's would. Today's are probably all machine done. It also looks like there's a seam in this tubing. You know, they have seamless. Looks like possibly cold rolled steel maybe. So that's that. And then, like I said, I believe it's a 7/16 fine thread. I think it's, yeah, 7/16 NFT, I believe. National Fine Thread is what these lugs are here. Just assuming that by visually. I'm pretty sure they're 7/16. Okay, let's go to the second part. I talked to another Bolens guy, left some comments. His name is Young Tractor Boy, and I wanted to explain that to him, but another thing I wanted to show here is this engine. It's going to be really hard because I don't really have good access to it, but This is a Briggs & Stratton. You can see here it says IC Industrial Commercial Cast Iron Bore, and this engine is what I repowered the 750 with because it's way more consistent and reliable for me compared to my Wisconsin and other Briggs engines that I have on there. This engine has been amazing. I've had this, I don't even know the long time. So maybe 10 years, if I'm guessing. So this specific one is a 10 horsepower. I don't have the exact numbers on it. I probably could get to them, but the point is that it's an electric start. And let's see if I can find the starter even. Yeah, here's an electric start right here. I've had so much trouble with the Bolens starter generators and Wisconsin engines that I just got tired of doing ropes and pulleys and all that stuff. Although I do have them, I still have to use them. This is the one thing that I really wanted this engine for, was this electric start. So never mind that this battery's dead right now. I can jump it and this thing starts right up. Just put some jumper cables on it. The problem is that I have so many tractors and I'm only one person who uses one at a time, so it's not worth it for me to have 10 batteries staying charged all the time. It's really bad use of my time and energy. So I usually have one good battery that I'm changing around to other tractors, if that makes sense. Right now the good battery's on the 1050, but this one I might be able to charge this one up and get it working fine. But the point is, even though this battery is dead, I can walk over here, and I'm not going to guarantee this, but I can turn on this ignition. I can give it a little choke, make sure it's in neutral, and it usually doesn't take long for this thing to start right up because I have this recoil starter. Nice heavy duty rope, probably 1/4 inch rope. This isn't like a thinner starting rope, but this recoil starter, if ever I have a dead battery, this usually fires like the first or second time. I'm not going to do it. It's cold. It's so cold out, I'm not going to do it, and I'm not ready for it. But anyway, this usually starts the first time once it's warm. So I might have to choke this little tiny bit, but this is super reliable. This recoil start saves me a whole lot of problems. So that's why I have that specific engine on there, is because even if the battery starter doesn't work, I can go to that and I can count on it every time. The 600, 750, 1254, and the other, I guess 800 or 900, whatever that is, they've got the starter generator, and those things are just not practical for me. They're not very good. They don't have much torque. They're kind of worn out. They don't have the torque that I need in them. So this engine specifically is great for me. Now I've got 10 horsepower on my 750, and I can't say that the 2.5 horsepower makes any difference, but if it does, it's only for the better. Maybe I'll go through a little bit more belts. Maybe I tear up a couple belts that the engine has power but the rear end doesn't, but I've never had any issue where I'd have any power problems with any of these things. The torque on the back wheels is just so high. So this engine just fit right in place. There was some drilling. I think I did have to change 2 holes on there as far as drilling goes. But the most important part about that is, does this pulley fit and does it align with the pulleys down below? And that engine was one where I could do that. A lot of times you see these engines similar to a side shaft like this, and they just don't have what you need. I believe it's a 1-inch drive shaft sticking out a little further than normal. Like you don't just have a short stub, it's a little bit longer stub on there. And then the pulley sits in there with a set screw. That engine, like I said, I would suggest if anybody is repowering these, I'd go to that type of engine because it's been super reliable. I've had that proven over about 10 years. It's probably been 9, but yeah, this carburetor system, if you look at carburetor there on the 600, then you look at the carburetor on this newer engine, they're very similar, but the difference between those older ones and this one specifically is this one, I've never ever had any problems with this carburetor. That's another problem with all my other engines, my Wisconsins and my Briggs, the older ones. It's the components attached to them. These engines, the crank, the case, the heads, everything are just in excellent shape interior wise. It's the components like the carburetors and alternators and generators and recoils, all that stuff is what goes bad. This one carburetor on this engine, I've only had to do one thing for the entire time that I've had it, and if I run it for a pretty long time and it gets warmed up and I'm really working this thing pretty hard up and down hills, there is a small screw right here with the adjustment on it. Very, very rarely you'll hear the engine labor just a tiny bit. It does kind of a pattern. I just barely turn that, maybe a 1/16 of a turn even, just a small adjustment there and it's back to good. So that is super reliable. If I ever have any issues with this whatsoever, all I do is I just go up here and crank this just a tiny skosh and I get this right back into timing, adjusting. Everything's good on the fuel mixtures. So I will say that has been amazing. I wouldn't trade this engine out for anything else, honestly, because it's super reliable. I've driven this, oh my gosh, thousands of miles, I'm sure. The 750. The park is a mile or two away, about maybe 2 or 3 miles. I've actually driven this to my park in order to work on the course. So I'll drive it on the road for 3 miles, which is kind of a high speed thing and you want to get there quickly. And then once you get there, then you're working it like a workhorse. And then not only that, you have to make sure it's in good enough shape and you have enough gas and everything else to get back home, driving it home also. That way you don't have to put it on a trailer and go through all that stuff. So I've actually driven this to the park many times to go work on the park and then driven it back home. So usually comes home muddy like this. I'll have to do some cleaning up. But yeah, I think that's pretty much covers most of the points I wanted to make. If I think of anything later, I'll put it in the description. That mostly covers everything I really planned on covering today. I've got chains in here, I've got hooks, I've got clevises. I basically pull a lot of stuff, whether it's a trailer or something else. Here's another one I use quite a bit. This big clevis. I can just drop this through the trailer hitch and hook up anything to it. I keep probably 20 pounds of chains in this little thing back here. Different size chains also. Another thing I'm going to point out is this is my 750. This is a 600 fenders, and I put them on here for practicality and looks. This functions way better for me on the 750 that I use a lot, where the 600, these are the fenders that are supposed to be for the 750 and I don't really like them. And there's not really good access underneath there. They're just kind of really plain to me. I don't really like them too much. They're just what they are. So I put the 600 fenders on the 750, not only because it looks better, but it's way more functional for me. Then we get into the 1254, which I really don't like at all. So originally when I got this, I had to modify this drive system, and I've done a video on that. I had to modify the drive system, and just to keep this kind of an open wheel and easy access into this area here, I just put this wood stuff on here and just made it work. Well, the reason I really didn't like these fenders is they're not very nice looking, obviously. But another thing is, when you put them on there correctly, look at where they mount here, and it's right up against this stick shift here. And for me, it just was always in the way for things. It's just a really tight area down there. Once you get these wheels on, it's really tight. So I didn't really like these. These are going to go away. I'm actually going to probably end up taking this 1254, taking the engine and the rear end and putting it on the 1050. The 1254 engine's great, rear end's great. I had to modify the drive system. That's not great. The front end's great. Lots of great parts on here. However, overall, I use it. It looks ugly, but I'd really like to have that engine and that rear end on the 1050, which is covered right now because it's in pretty good shape. So that my eventual plan is, I believe that this rear end is probably going to be on here and the engine's probably going to be on here. So the 1050 is going to have a 12D motor on it instead of the 10D, because this carburetor and this linkage are giving me problems. The starters, well, I rebuilt it, it's junk, but so 1050 is really what I'm gonna try to concentrate on. I'm trying to have, my goal is to have a 1050, the 750, and the 600, and I'm not even sure about the 600 for the long term, because I need to use these and they have to be really workable and practical. The thing about the 600 really is that it's more collectible and it's more rare, so that's kind of why I have it now. But I don't really use it much, and that does have what I would call a governor issue. So example, when you are driving and you put this under a load, that engine is supposed to sense that and adjust accordingly. While my 750 and my 1254 do that, my 600 and my 1050 have governor issues in that they don't adjust to the load that's on there. So for example, this one, it's kind of one speed. If I start going up a hill, it'll spit and sputter a little bit. It just doesn't adjust properly. So you have to be a little more playful with the throttle, and you almost have to be like the governor yourself on the throttle, which is not something you should be doing, but it's just what it has happened. So if I'm going up a hill, even if this has a power at idle, I still have to throttle it up because the governor's not great. So I'm having that issue with the 600. I mean, it'll run, start, drive just fine, but when you start getting it under loads, bigger loads that I'm used to, then the governor starts becoming an issue because it doesn't really take up the adjustment. The 1254 does amazing at that. It's really strong. The 1050 was the one I showed a couple videos ago, where the throttle is really erratic. I believe that's in the linkages. There's just a lot of pieces going places that are pivots. Your pivot has to be perfect. I think that some of the holes are wallowed out a little bit and just used over the long period of time. So yeah, um, the problem with showing these hub adapters is I only have 2 pairs of skinny wheels and everything's on something right now. Otherwise I would show more about that, but every pair of rear wheels that I have, I put oversized tires on them. I've got 1 pair of tires, I believe it's on the 800 or 900, whatever this blue one is. This has got some really fat tires on it. This is these are 23 by 10.5 by 12s, but the width of them is really wide. So obviously they have a big dish on them, and even the tire sticks out past the rim. So that would not be practical for the inside wheel on a dual wheel adapter. So I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to cover in this video. It took a little bit longer than I expected, but that should cover these. And like I said, this red paint was probably because they were from International Harvester or Case, or they could have even been a Farmall. Yeah, so I believe these are originally something else. So, okay, my final point about these wheel hub adapters. If you're having trouble finding these, which you will, my suggestion is don't just look into the Bolens category. Look in other manufacturers like the Ford, the Cub Cadet, the Sears. There are a couple other, Montgomery Ward I think even was one. John Deere had some. It could even be a Yanmar thing. I don't even know all the manufacturers, but because I think that these wheels are called Jacobsen wheels, and I think that's kind of what the standard is, they're called Jacobsens. I think because of that, that these adapters could be found in other brands, not just for Bolens. So I really don't think that these are a Bolens item. These are probably a different manufacturer, but because all the wheels became kind of a standard thing in America at one point, these should work on many other models. And I know these will work on Cub Cadets, some Sears models, some JD models. So don't just look for Bolens hub adapters. Don't be afraid to look into other manufacturers that have the same wheel patterns. And again, just re-emphasizing, I believe they're called a Jacobsen wheel. So that would be maybe helpful on trying to find them. Okay, so that pretty much covers it. I'm going to sign out for now. That should cover most of what I wanted to cover.